Okay, welcome to today's class. Today we are going to be looking at finance officers. We are going to be looking at finance officers of government, that is, those officers in the public sector that are responsible for the financials of the government, be it at the federal, state, or local government, or at the MDA levels. I did tell you in previous class that MDA means Ministry, Department, and Agency is actually an acronym for that. So be mindful of it. Now, there are various finance officers in the public sector that we will be looking at their meaning, what they do, their roles in the public sector. One of them is the apex position, which is the Accountant General of the Federation. The second in that line is the Auditor General for the Federation. The next in line is the Accounting Officer. The next following is Sub-Accounting Officer. The next also is Revenue Collector. The next also is Imprest Holder. Officer control. The last is officer controlling expenditure. Now these are the various officers that controls or work with financials in the public sector. All the corruptions that have been happening in Nigeria happen through their offices, and when they see those corruptions, looting, embezzlement, bribery and corruption, they look the other way around. It's not ethical. But then, let's continue. Now, we'll be looking at who is an accountant general. Accountant general is the chief finance officer. Accountant general is the chief finance officer of the receipts and payments of the federation. He is saddled with the general responsibility of supervision of the accounts of the ministries, extra-ministerial departments, and the preparation of annual financial statements of the nation. So these are the various responsibilities these are what the accountant general does as a person. These are what he does as a person. Now, the powers or duties of the accountant general is actually three in number. He has the power to access any book at any time. 2, he has power to request for any information or explanation as the case may be. This is just practical. Even in the private sector, the financial controller or the CFO, as the case may be, will always query every payment that he is asked to make or approve. He will query it. When he queries the payment, he will demand for the necessary documents backing up the payments, the invoices, if any. You understand? The advance and all that. So the accountant general can request for explanation of any expenditure that has been incurred from the person in charge. The next one is power to carry out ad hoc investigation. He can investigate any issue he suspects of in the ministry. Now, the functions of accountant general for the federation, I would identify 4, but in this my note, I provided more than 4, so you can read that up. So the accountant general serves as the chief accounting officer of the what? Receipt and payments of the government of the what? Federation. So he is the person, the chief accountant of the receipt and payment. Remember, we were taught in school that the government sector adopts cash basis of accounting, So the chief accountant of that receipt of money and payment of money in the public sector is the accountant general. 2. He supervises the accounts of the ministries, extra-ministerial departments, and other arms of government like parastatals, agencies, board, The third one, he collates, prepare, and publish the statutory financial statements of the federal government and any other statement of account required by the Ministry of Finance. You understand? MOF means Ministry of Finance, so you need to get used to these short forms. They are important, but let me write it in full so that you wouldn't have issue while you are studying. Four, he maintains and operates the Consolidated Revenue Fund, Development Fund, and Contingency Fund. You see, these are the responsibilities. He does a lot. So you read that up by yourself. So we'll move down to the next accounting officer. That person is the Auditor General. Audit actually deals with an independent examination of the books of accounts as prepared by the financial accountants, to attest to the truism of the financial statement. So the Auditor General is meant to go through the financial statements prepared by the Accountant General and issue a report thereon on the status or his observation in that financial statement. And these reports are directed to the National Assembly, in particular Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly. Now, so this is the officer responsible for the audit and reports on the public accounts of the Federation, including persons, bodies established by law, entrusted with the receipt, custody, sale, issue, transfer, or delivery of any stamps, securities, stores, or other property of the government of the Federation, and the certification of annual accounts of the nation. That is all. Now, the AUGF is given free hand to examine the account in a manner he deems fit. So you don't dictate for him what to do. You don't tell him what to do either. So he decides what he wants to do and does same without being queried. Now, in his opinion, having examined the accounts, he will state that the accounts have been properly kept. You know what we mean by account has been properly kept? That means all records were captured accordingly in accordance with the double entry bookkeeping principles. B. All public funds have been fully received, accounted for, and the rules are sufficient to ensure effective check on the assessment, collection, and proper allocation of revenue. So these are what he would pass in his own opinion of the nature of the account he has examined. See, monies received, monies have been expended for the purpose for which they were appropriated for. In the public sector, before a sum will be spended, before a sum will be spent, it must first of all be provided for in the annual budget. So it is the duty of the auditor to ensure that all sums spent in that year were provided for in the annual budget of the government. So these are what he must state in his opinion. Appointment and removal of the AUGF. The AUGF shall be appointed by the president subject to the confirmation of the National Assembly. These are protocols which you will go through and understand it when you read the material. B. The appointment shall be based on the recommendation of the Federal Civil Service Commission. So before the auditor will be appointed, it is the Federal Civil Service Commission that will send names to the president. So the president will now choose out of those names and forward same to the National Assembly for approval and confirmation. So that these are the procedures. You understand? Once the auditor have been appointed, he or she shall not be removed except A, he is sick, 2, he is dead, he died in the office. 3, gross misconduct, where the auditor has been found to be maybe probably collecting bribe, or found to be in a conflict of interest, as the case may be. So we can say he has been found guilty of gross misconduct. On such notes, the president can remove him. The expiration of terms of office, that is, he or she has served for 35 years or he or she is above 60 years, whichever comes first. So these are the conditions or exemptions upon which the auditor shall be removed from office. The power and duties of the auditor general, is the same with that of the accountant generals. He has power to assess any books and records. He has power to request for information and explanation. He has power to carry out any ad hoc investigation. Now, functions of the AUGF. There are called 4 functions he does: financial audit, appropriation audit, financial control audit, value for money audit. Now, the rest are easy to understand when you read them, but I'll lay emphasis on value for money audit. Value for money audit is an audit that ensures that the money spent added value to the lives of the citizenry. How does it achieve this? It audits 3 E's. And those 3 E's are effectiveness, efficiency, and economy. Now, if the money that government has spent, was it effective? In the sense that if it is effective, it means that we use that money, to achieve more results, using the same money to achieve more results. Just like 10 billion naira were spent to construct Lekki Bridge. We are now spending that same 10 billion naira to construct a bigger bridge. We cannot say value for money has been achieved because it was more effective. Now, for efficiency, spending less to achieve a greater goal. For economy, spending less, ensuring that we achieve more by not spending much, by economizing economy. So these are value for money audits. So for the audit of the Auditor General to be complete, he must carry out value for money audit. And value for money audit, according to research, is peculiar to the public sector alone. Why? Because the public sector does not have a clear objective upon which performance of accounting officers and those politicians whom we have voted for can be measured. So we use value for money to ensure, okay, since it doesn't have a template upon which to measure it, let's look at it in these 3 angles. So we move down to the next. Scope of work of the auditor. You look at it, is quite easy to understand. Then we now look at accounting officer. Now, who is an accounting officer? An accounting officer is the permanent secretary of ministries and head of extra-ministerial departments. Now, we know that the highest level in the civil service is permanent secretary, which is level 16. I think step 5. That's the highest level in the civil service. Now, where you get to that level, you become the PAMSEC of the ministry. Now, let's take one hypothetical ministry, for example, Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education has permanent secretary. That permanent secretary is the person that will see to the day-to-day running of the activities of Ministry of Education, not the Minister of Education. The Minister of Education is a political appointee, just as we have Malam Adamu, the current Minister of Education. He is just but a political appointee. You understand? He does not see to the day-to-day running of the activities of the ministry. Rather, the permanent secretary of Ministry of Education sees to that. That is why, for those that are scholars that have won scholarship from federal government or Federal Ministry of Education, you will see that the advert of those scholarship or the awarding of those scholarship are usually signed by the permanent secretary, not the Minister of Education. So the permanent secretary is the accounting officer. If at the end of this course you are expected to have perfect understanding of how government work, to have a good picture of the skeletal administrative work in the public sector, and this will help you to know whom to hold responsible when it comes to failure of delivering a dividend of democracy. Now, that is that for that. So, what are the functions, of accounting officer? Ensuring the prompt budgetary and accounting system are established. As a PAMSEC, it's not my duty to prepare it, but it is my duty to ensure it is being prepared. Do you understand? So the PAMSEC will now have to call the accounting units in the ministry. Alpha, have you guys prepared the so and so? Okay, if you have done that, come and present it to me. He does not understand anything. No. During your presentation, you will now be explaining to him why you did what you did, why you made social assumption. That is how accountant serves the management. But that is that for that. Ensuring essential management control tools are put in place to minimize waste and fraud. C. Rendering monthly and other financial accounting returns and transcript to the Accountant General of the Federation. Now, at the end of every month, the ministries are expected to render an account by sending their transcripts to the office of the Accountant General for the Federation. So it is the duty of the PAMSEC to ensure that transcripts are prepared as and when due and sent to the office of the Accountant General. So he doesn't do the work, but he ensures it is done. Remember, he is the one in charge of the day-to-day running activities of the ministry. I think the next is sub-accounting officer, which is almost the same thing with accounting officer. Sub-accounting officer are those accounting officers whom are at the various branch of the ministries, extra-ministerial departments, or pay offices of the federal government. For example, Nigerian Police Pay Office. Nigerian Police Pay Office is in every state. So the person in charge of that particular pay office in each state is a sub-accounting officer. The custom has pay officers. The military has pay officers. I hope you are there. So these are whom we call sub-accounting officers. I said it. This is the officer who is entrusted with the receipt, custody, and disbursement of public funds. He or she is required to maintain treasury cash book and any other book required by the Accountant General, for example, Sub-Treasurer of the Federation, Federal Pay Officer, Police Pay Officer, custom area pay officer, director of finance and accounts. So they have their functions too: maintenance of treasury cash book, exercising supervision over the receipts of public revenue, supervision and supervising the expenditure of government, and ensuring that no payment is made without proper authorization, promptly preparing such financial statements as are required by law, ensuring proper provision is made for safekeeping of public fund. That is that for that. Then we have treasury cash book. This is computation. So we'll continue in our next class from here. Thank you for attending.